I refused to donate my kidney to the father who abandoned us. Then I found out his new family knew about me the whole time. My father's wife called me at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday and asked me to save the life of the man who left my mother and me for another family when I was 7 years old. She didn't say hello first. She said, "Your father is dying and you're the only match." I hadn't heard his voice in 19 years. I didn't even recognize the number. And in that first phone call, before I said a single word back, she told me I owed him this. Owed. Like there was a ledger somewhere with my name on it, racking up interest since 2007. I'm going to tell you exactly what happened over the 6 weeks that followed, the guilt trips, the family group chat that turned into a public trial. The thing my half-sister accidentally let slip that changed everything, and what I decided to do with the one thing that was actually, finally, only mine to give. I know this is going to be long. I need to get all of it out, because I've been carrying pieces of this story alone for a month, and I don't think I can hold it by myself anymore. My name doesn't matter for this, so I'll just be op. I'm 34, I live outside Columbus, Ohio. I work in logistics for a regional trucking company, and until 6 weeks ago I hadn't spoken to my biological father, Richard, since I was 15. Here's the short version of our history, because you need it to understand why that midnight phone call felt like a grenade rolling into my living room. Richard left when I was 7. Not the slow kind of leaving, where a marriage erodes over years and you can see it coming. The sudden kind. He told my mother he was going on a work trip to Charlotte and never came back. It took her 3 weeks to find out he wasn't in Charlotte at all. He was 40 minutes away, in the next county over, already living with a woman named Denise. He'd been seeing her for over a year. My mother worked 2 jobs to keep our house. I remember eating a lot of grilled cheese that first winter because it was cheap and filling. I remember her crying in the bathroom with the fan on so I wouldn't hear, except the fan in our house was loud and old and didn't cover anything. Richard sent birthday cards for a couple of years. Then even those stopped. When I was 15, I found his number through a cousin and called him myself. I don't even remember what I wanted to say. I think I just wanted him to explain it to my face, or my voice anyway. He picked up, sounded surprised, said he was in a really busy season of life, and that we should find time to catch up soon. We never did. That was the last time I heard from him directly. 19 years. Meanwhile, Denise and Richard had 3 kids together, my half-siblings. I know their names from Facebook, Katie, Marcus, and the youngest, Ava, but I've never met any of them in person. Not once. Not at a wedding, not at a funeral, not by accident at a gas station. Richard built an entire second life 40 minutes from where I grew up, and as far as I could tell, that life had no room in it for the family he already had. So when Denise called me, Denise, a woman I had never spoken one word to in my entire life, and told me Richard was in end-stage kidney failure and that I was a potential match. My first feeling wasn't fear or sympathy. It was disbelief that they even had my phone number. Denise explained it fast, like she'd rehearsed it. Richard had been diagnosed with polycystic kidney disease 2 years ago. It runs in families, which is, I'll point out, the only reason I was ever relevant to any of this. His kidney function had been declining, and he'd been on dialysis 3 times a week for the last 4 months. He needed a transplant. Katie and Marcus had both been tested and weren't matches. Ava was only 19, and they didn't want to put her through it if there was another option. A living donor from a sibling would be ideal, but failing that, a biological child. That's when Denise said my name, not "we were hoping you'd consider it." She said, "You're his daughter, you're the match, we need you to get tested this week." I told her I needed time to think. She told me time was the one thing Richard didn't have a lot of. I want to be clear about something because I know how this sounds out of context. I am not a monster. If a stranger on the street needed a kidney and I was a match, I'd at least genuinely consider it. What made this different wasn't the medical risk, though that's real too, major surgery, a permanent reduction in kidney function for me, months of recovery, and yes, I have my own life. My own family now, a husband and a 6-year-old son who needs his mother at full strength. What made this impossible to just say yes to was that this man had made a choice, decades ago, to not be my father. And now that his body needed something only his daughter could provide, suddenly I was his daughter again. Within 48 hours, my phone would not stop. First, it was Denise, twice a day, just checking in, always managing to mention how much pain Richard was in, how scared the kids were, how the doctor said time was critical. Then it was Katie, 28, the oldest of the second family, messaging me on Facebook of all things, a platform where we had never once interacted, saying, "I know this is a lot to ask from someone who doesn't really know us, but he's our dad and we're desperate. Doesn't really know us." That phrase sat wrong with me for days before I figured out why. It wasn't doesn't know us because life is complicated. It was framed like a fact of geography, like I lived on the other side of the world instead of 45 minutes down I-71. Like the distance between us was an accident. Then Marcus called. Marcus, I'll admit, was different. He seemed genuinely uncomfortable with the whole thing, and at one point said quietly, "For what it's worth, I don't think it's fair for us to ask you this." I told Mom that, but I also don't want him to die. That one actually got to me a little. Marcus, at least, seemed to understand the position I was in. Then came the extended family group chat. Denise added me to something called Richard's Support Squad. I am not making that name up, which had 11 people in it, most of whom I had never heard of. Aunts, cousins, a family friend who introduced herself as basically an aunt. Within an hour of being added, there were already messages about prayer chains, about a GoFundMe for medical costs. And this is the part that made my stomach turn, a poll. Someone had made a poll asking members to vote on who should reach out to Op next to help her understand the urgency. They were running a campaign, on me, to get access to my organs. I left the group chat within the hour. Denise called 4 times back-to-back after that. I didn't answer. Here's where it gets worse, because up until this point I could have told myself this was just misguided grief, a family in crisis reaching for whatever life raft was closest. I could have kept feeling guilty in a manageable way. Then Ava reached out. Ava is 19. She's the youngest, the one they'd decided was too young to be tested. She DM'd me on Instagram, and unlike everyone else, she didn't open with pressure. She opened with, "Hi, this is really weird, I know, but can I just talk to you? Not about the kidney thing." Just talk. We ended up on a video call 2 nights later. It was the first time I had ever seen a member of my father's second family in real time, moving, talking, existing. She looked a little like me around the eyes, which was disorienting in a way I wasn't prepared for. Ava told me she'd grown up hearing almost nothing about Dad's first family. She knew he'd been married before. She didn't know there'd been a kid. She found out about me, about my asterisk existence, when she was 16, going through an old filing cabinet looking for her own birth certificate, and found divorce paperwork with my name on it as a minor child of the marriage. She said when she asked her mother about it, Denise got upset and told her it wasn't anything to worry about, that Richard's first marriage didn't work out, and that there wasn't really a relationship there to speak of. Wasn't really a relationship there to speak of. I sat with that sentence for a long time after the call ended. Because here's what it meant once I put it together. Denise had known about me this entire time. Not vaguely, not as some rumor. She had known, specifically, that Richard had a daughter from his first marriage, that he had walked away from her when she was 7, and Denise had chosen, for 19 years, to keep that fact buried from her own children rather than deal with it. It wasn't that I'd been forgotten. I'd been *edited out, on purpose, by the same woman who was now calling me twice a day asking me to cut my own body open to save the man who did it. I went back and reread every message from Denise with that new information sitting in my chest like a stone. "You're his daughter. We need you." Not once in 6 weeks had she said, "I'm sorry we kept you a secret from your own siblings." Not once had she acknowledged that the reason Ava, Katie, and Marcus barely knew I existed was a decision she made, to protect a version of their family history where Richard was simply a good father who'd had one unfortunate first marriage, rather than a man who'd abandoned a 7-year-old. I confronted her about it directly. I called her the first time I'd called her, always the other way around before, and asked flatly, "Did you know about me the whole time?" There was a pause. Then, of course, we knew. We just didn't see the point in dwelling on it. It was a different chapter of his life. A different chapter of his life. I was a different chapter, not a person. A chapter Richard had closed, and Denise had helped him keep closed. until the day his kidneys started failing and I became useful again. That was the moment something in me went very quiet and very clear. I called Richard directly for the first time in 19 years. I want you to understand this took me 3 days to work up to, and I nearly hung up twice while it was ringing. He sounded old, tired, smaller than the memory I'd been carrying of him, which I guess is what illness does to a voice. He said my name like it still fit in his mouth easily, which almost undid me before I'd said anything at all. I told him I knew that Denise had known about me the entire time and had kept me hidden from his other kids. I asked him point blank, why, in 19 years and all that time living 45 minutes away, he never once tried to be part of my life until his body needed something from mine. He didn't deny any of it. That's the part I keep coming back to. He didn't say that's not true or let me explain it's complicated. He just went quiet for a moment and then said, I always meant to reach out. Life just got away from me. Life got away from me. 19 years got away from him. A remarriage, 3 more children, birthdays, graduations, a whole second life got away from him. But somehow none of that prevented him from remembering my full name and my phone number the exact week he needed a kidney. I told him I was sorry he was sick. I meant that, I want to be honest, I did mean it because whatever else is true, no one deserves to suffer through organ failure. But I told him I would not be donating my kidney. Not because of the surgery risk, though that's real. Not even really because of the years of silence, though that's real too. I told him the actual reason, that the request itself proved he had never seen me as his daughter in any way that mattered. A daughter is someone you show up for. I was only ever a asterisk donor, to him, a biological asset that happened to share his blood type, activated only in an emergency, like a spare part kept in a drawer for 19 years just in case. He tried a few more times to change my mind after that call, one more message from Denise calling me selfish, and saying I was letting a man die out of spite, which is a genuinely wild thing to say to someone whose entire childhood you helped erase. Katie sent one more message too, this one angrier, accusing me of punishing innocent people, meaning her, Marcus, and Ava, for something that wasn't their fault. That one actually landed. A little, because she wasn't wrong that none of this was Ava's fault, or really even Katie's or Marcus's, but I hadn't punished them. I had simply declined to have major surgery for a family that had spent 2 decades pretending I didn't exist, and only remembered otherwise when it was medically convenient. Those are different things, and I told her so, calmly, in writing, so there could be no confusion about it later. Word got around the extended family fast, the way it does. Within a week, I'd been quietly removed from a cousin's wedding invite list I hadn't even known I was on. An aunt I'd met exactly twice in my life sent me a message calling me cold-hearted and said she'd raised her kids differently. I didn't respond to most of it. I'd said everything I needed to say directly to Richard and Denise, and I wasn't interested in defending myself to a chorus of people who had also, it turned out, known about me and said nothing for 19 years. Here's where the story actually turns, though, and it's the part I didn't see coming. Marcus called me again, about 10 days after my final conversation with Richard. He told me he'd confronted Denise himself after finding out from Ava, who'd finally told him everything, that their mother had known about me the whole time and chosen to keep it from all 3 of them. He said it had caused a real rupture in his own house. He'd grown up believing his father was, in his words, not perfect, but basically a good guy who'd had a rough first marriage. Finding out that rough first marriage involved a 7-year-old girl and grilled cheese winters changed how he saw his father entirely. Not because Richard got sick, but because of what getting sick had revealed about what kind of man he'd always been. Marcus apologized to me. He was the only one who did. He said the family had used me like an emergency resource and that it wasn't fair, and that he understood completely why I said no. As for Richard, I heard through Marcus, not directly, that he was placed on the deceased donor transplant waiting list. It's not a death sentence. People wait on that list and survive on dialysis for years, sometimes get matched with a compatible donor through the registry. I want to be clear, I don't know what will happen to him, and honestly, some nights that uncertainty sits heavier on me than I expected it to. But I also know I didn't cause his illness, and I wasn't obligated to spend my one working pair of kidneys undoing a choice he made in 2007. 3 months later, I want to close this out properly because a lot of you who heard the first version of this story have been asking what happened next. Richard is still on dialysis, still on the waiting list. We have not spoken again. I don't think we will, and for the first time in my life, I've made peace with that, actual peace. Not the performed kind I used to do as a kid when people asked if I missed my dad, and I'd say, not really, while meaning the opposite. Denise, through a mutual family contact, apparently told people I chose to let my father die out of a grudge. I've stopped correcting that version. People who need to believe it will believe it regardless of what I say, and I've decided their opinion of me isn't a debt I owe either. Marcus and I actually talk now. Not constantly, but real conversations, a few phone calls, one long text thread where he asked me questions about what our childhood, mine and his half of it, actually looked like on my end. He started therapy, partly because of everything this brought up about his own family. Ava and I have talked a couple of times too. I don't know what our relationship becomes long-term, if anything, but I'll say this. Talking to the two of them has been the only good thing to come out of this entire 6 weeks. They didn't ask to be born into a family that erased a kid to keep its own story clean, any more than I asked to be the kid who got erased. Katie and I haven't spoken since her message calling me a punisher. I don't think we will, and I've made peace with that too. My mother, when I finally told her the whole thing, she'd known Denise called, but not the extent of the group chat and the guilt campaign, said one thing that I've held onto since. She said, you don't owe your body to someone just because you share DNA. Love isn't inherited. It's built day by day, over years he chose not to show up for. I think that's the whole story, really. Distilled into one sentence by a woman who spent 19 years building an entire childhood for me out of double shifts and grilled cheese, without once asking me to pay her back for it. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. I needed to get this off my chest, and I think I finally have.